Hi, and welcome to a Small Medium at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. Today, I wanted to mention, because I might not have before, about the fact that I have a beautiful website my daughter Nancy created called ASmallMediumAtLarge.co. If you go to that website, you'll see shows that we have, shows we've been on, plus a lot of information about my upcoming book that I'm planning and hoping will be finished and published this year. So take a minute and check it out if you can. And also thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing, and all your wonderful comments. So let me tell you about our special guest today. Janet Piedilato is an author, transpersonal psychologist, complementary healthcare consultant, and ordained minister. She holds a doctorate in biology from New York University and a second doctorate in transpersonal psychology from Saybrook University, where Janet studied with Dr. Stanley Krippner, world-renowned dream psychologist, and Dr. Eugene Taylor, Harvard scholar and William James authority. Through her writing, both nonfiction and fiction, she offers a glimpse of the inner world accessed through dream consciousness. Her early studies on parapsychology brought her into contact with Doctors J.B. and Louisa Rhine at the Rhine Institute for Studies on the Nature of Man at Duke University, as well as Dr. Carly Osis at the American Society for Psychical Research, New York, where she presented her independent research at their conference meetings. Janet was privileged to study shamanism with Michael and Sandra Harner and holds the distinction of being the first woman practitioner to present shamanic ritual at the Harvard Divinity School Conference on Reinterpreting Shamanism. She has led shamanic studies at international centers such as the prestigious Institute for Ethnobotany and Shamanic Studies in Belize. Her publications include The Mystical Dream Tarot and Pieda's Tale, and her newly released book, The Dream Gate, which present novel approaches to understanding the language of dreams and life itself. And pardon me if I said any names incorrectly. So let's welcome Janet here today. Hi, Janet.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Gail.
I have to say, you'll have to tell our audience what that background is that you have behind you, because it's absolutely intriguing and magnificent.
Okay, I'm sitting here in a room actually filled with books with a virtual background of the Gaia Anderson Museum in Old Cairo. What is behind me is part of two homes built in the 11th and 17th century, and they are adjacent to the oldest mosque in Cairo. They are still presently standing and in good condition because of the Englishman, Gaia Anderson, who asked for permission to live in this space, and then he would give it to the government, to the Antiquities Department, so that you and I and all that travel to Egypt can go within and see a magnificent collection of Egyptian items from their wonderful and lush history. I sit here because there are two doors, and if I move to the side, you can see two doorways, which represent for me the two gates that go into the unconscious. We have one that's the gate of horn, one that's the gate of ivory, of truth, and certainly of deceit. The names given to us by the great epic poet Homer. So that's where I'm sitting.
That's a wonderful, wonderful place. And I wish we could project ourselves right through that portal right now, but instead.
Well, I'll be going back in February of next year, but I brought people on pilgrimage to Egypt, and those of you who have not gone there, put it on your bucket list because it's magnificent.
I want to say that absolutely, and we even have a show back in our archives there, if you take a look, with a gentleman from Egypt who shares all about Egyptian history. But today we're going to talk about dreams. And what I want to start with, that I always do with all of my guests, at least as I've been trying to, is I like to go back to the childhood, because some people, that's where it began for them. Some people, it was later in life. But were you a dreamer as a child, or did you have family members? Like I had a grandmother who always dreamt and shared her dreams with me. And she would say, what deceased people that she would speak to when she would have her dreams. So to me, dreaming was something I grew up with and felt an importance with. How was that for you?
Well, absolutely. I was a dreamer right from childhood, and a lucid dreamer at that. And I grew up in a home where I was the youngest and the only girl. I had three older brothers, but my mother was an amazing psychic and a dreamer. So for me, I grew up nourished by the fact that dreams were important, dreams were special. And literally, my oldest memory is a lucid dream. And even to this day, as I think upon that dream, it began my whole life study of parapsychology, of the dream essence, of remembering who I really am and where I come from. The dreams were important, and that childhood dream is still with me all of these decades later. So yes, dreaming was important to me as a child. I wrote down my dreams. I studied my dreams to see what they meant, even as a small child. And lucid dreaming, even during my wake, my oldest memory is really a lucid dream. And as I said, it still sits with me. And those of you who did not have childhood dreams, you can still pick it up as an adult. So those of us that are lucky, yes, we began in childhood, and it's been a lifetime journey, and it'll be until I die. But the fact is, we can pick it up at any time. Consciousness has a dream half and a waking half. And unless they go together, we're not fully healed and we're not fully conscious.
So could you explain to some of our listeners who might not know, what is lucid dreaming?
All right, lucid dreaming. First of all, we have beta consciousness, which is our consciousness here and now. If each one of you are actually listening to Gail and I, and we've not put you to sleep yet, you're awake, you're aware, you're listening to us, you're hearing what we're saying, you're seeing us, you're connecting. But there's another way of consciousness, which is the dream consciousness. Most look at dream classically as something that happens when your body is sleeping at night or during the day, and you're on a mental landscape seeing something. Most people during dream don't realize they're dreaming. They wake up in the morning. You have about 4 or 5 dreams during the night, by the way. Most people only remember the last dream. That's about an hour and a half before you wake up in the morning. You may sit down, you may have a notebook, you may write it down on a pad, and you may just ignore it, or you may, like me, spend hours of one's life looking at these dreams to find what they were really trying to tell you. But if you're lucid during a dream, that's completely different. So your body is asleep at night, mental images are rising, your consciousness is changing from the beta consciousness that you and I have now, looking at the environment outside us, using our senses to take in everything that's outside. You're sleeping, your body is asleep, and you're dreaming, but there's a difference. You are aware that you're dreaming. You are aware that your body is resting in bed. For instance, one of my recent dreams, I'm in a magnificent place, a mansion, beautiful, old, antiques and chandeliers in this beautiful inner place. But outside, I'm hearing lightning and thunder. And I'm realizing that this place that I'm in is a dream, but that lightning and thunder that's outside the dream somatically is happening outside my waking reality room. I am aware, but my body's sleeping in bed. And in that dream, I have someone that approaches the door. Apparently, I'm the hostess of a great party, and this person is terrified. They've entered into my space. I handed them a flute of champagne, and I said to them, "Do you hear the thunder and lightning? That's outside. It cannot hurt us in here. In here, in this space, we're perfectly safe." Well, I woke up, and yes, it was lightning and thundering outside. That's a somatic dream. Something was happening. Let's say you live by a train station. It's outside, the train is passing. You're in a dream, but you know that you're dreaming. You know that your body is in the bed. Now, that dream I looked at as very significant to show that no matter what is happening in our waking life, spiritually, inside is what counts. The physical body is just the vessel that holds the spirit, and that body that was coming in, that was frightened because of the lightning and thunder, was being calmed by saying, whatever that weather is outside, whatever challenge you have in your life, it's going to come and go with the waters of time. But what's inside is important. Now, some people don't remember dreams at all. And so they'd have to first remember a dream in order to try to have a lucid dream at night while they're sleeping. But what I recommend, I've extended the word lucid to having a waking dream. So we can talk about shamanism and a shamanic journey. We can talk about a meditation. When you're altering your focus, I like to say you're a walker between the worlds. You are still aware. For instance, I'm sitting in a waking reality room. I'm aware of that. I'm sitting before computer monitors. I'm aware of that. But something inside me has my focus somewhere else. I might be in Egypt, and this has happened. It can be called remote vision or whatever, but you're lucid. You are aware of what's happening on your mental landscape while you know that in another consciousness, you're awake, you're asleep, but you're not experiencing the environment around you. So lucidity, you are aware of an inner experience that's showing you something beyond your local environment. So you can be lucid in a visionary experience during the day with your eyes opened, or while you're sleeping at night, which is where the term is classically put, so that your body is sleeping and you're awake. But each one of us can have these experiences. And actually, every 90 minutes, your body changes from the beta consciousness to that alpha theta liminal space. And that's when you can catch something inside that's giving you a message. I like to say they're bubbles in a champagne glass. They're messages from the unconscious. You may be working at your computer. All of a sudden, you're thinking about someone you haven't thought of in years. There's a message there. And it doesn't mean pick up the phone and call them, but there may be something connected with that message, with that image, because every image that rises is a doorway to bring you somewhere else. So you can be lucid, awake or asleep, while you're walking between both worlds.
That is a wonderful explanation for experiences I've had where afterwards I say, I'm not sure if I was dreaming or if because I was awake, so it didn't seem like it, but it felt like I was in a dream.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've literally been at my computer screen and knowing that I'm sitting at my computer screen, I'm not asking to go anywhere. I'm not doing any sort of drumming or rattling or chanting. And suddenly I'm somewhere else. I've been in Egypt. I've been in Ethiopia, where I've never been in waking reality. I know I'm there. Or quite recently, and I certainly talked about it in the classes that I give online, I had 3 nights of lucid dreams bringing me to Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris. I'd never been there in waking reality. I knew exactly where I was in the dream. And then I asked why I was there. I asked for the individuals to come forward. And 2 individuals did come forward, historically prominent individuals, one a poet and one a musician. The poet gave me a poem that I had never heard before that was very significant, and it was his. And the musician gave me a song that I knew from when I played the piano. And I initially recognized it and then said, no, I think it might be something else. And then in that mind, in that lucid mind in the dream, I said, why am I thinking that? It's not like that other song at all. It was the Fantasy Interlude by Chopin. And I'm thinking, is it the Moonlight Sonata? Well, I woke up and looked it up, and Chopin didn't want to publish it because he thought it sounded like the Moonlight Sonata, which it didn't. Now, I was in the dream, lucid and aware, and of course got myself on a plane and hadn't gone anywhere for all of COVID. Said I needed to get out there, and of course I end up being there for the anniversary of a very important event from the dream. So this can happen in that altered space, and I can be awake at the computer and have something like that happen, where, as I said, I'm in Ethiopia, I'm in the tundra, and you doing shamanic work, Gail, surely during these times, where are you going? It's that liminal space. And where most people go wrong is they say, well, I really can't be there because I still know I'm sitting in my waking room. I don't know what they're waiting for. They're thinking that the magic carpet is just going to whisk them away and they're not going to remember the room. In the terms of parapsychology, we may say, well, we've got remote vision. Or if we're in the terms of the new age, people will say, oh, I'm having an out-of-body experience. No, An out-of-body experience, you're dead, folks. You're on the other side. You're having an expanded body experience. You're still connected to the soul and spirit inside you, but you've expanded. You've gone into a wider territory. And that explains it more. But you can have these experiences awake or asleep, bidden or not. You can be, as I said, you could be working at your computer and all of a sudden you're someplace else. Just record it. And then what does it mean? That's the real question.
I have found that dreams have changed my life.
Yes.
But it was when I followed them, and that the more that I listen to them, I find that with a dream, when it stays with me, like it's the rest of the day, and that dream just keeps popping up in I can't get rid of the dream. Like, I feel then there's a very strong message, something I'm supposed to be doing. It's giving me this, pay attention to me. It's not like a dream where it just fleets by and I can't remember it later. It really sits with me. I am very grateful. I might have shared this before, but I was here in my house. I think it was 1987. And I had a dream that there was a man I was supposed to meet in Taos, New Mexico at the Hanuman Temple. And it was a crazy dream. And when I woke up, I knew that I had been invited to the Hanuman Temple from a retreat I had been at, and I had met Vishnu, the temple caretaker. And he had invited me and said, if you ever want to come to Taos to the temple, come and visit us. So I had that somewhere planted from months and months earlier in my brain somewhere. And I had family visiting, so I had someone to watch my daughter. And I just said the next day, I said, I have to get on a plane. I have to go to New Mexico. There's a man waiting for me. And I followed the dream. I know my family thought I was probably crazy because I was taking a dream and jumping on a plane to go meet someone that didn't even exist, that's in a dream. And when I got to the Hanuman Temple, it was a ceremony, the Bandara, I think it's called Bandara. And there was 200 people there and all this food and festivity. And I just walked right up to this man and said, I think you're the man in my dream. And he looked at me, and it took me a while after I was talking for a few minutes, and I realized he didn't speak English. And I'm telling him how I think you're the man in my dream. And then I find out actually he speaks Spanish. It's a second language. He's a Huichol Indian. That was 1986. It's now 2023. I have been deeply involved with the Huichol Indians in the Sierra Madre Occidental in Mexico since that dream. And even today, I have a Huichol Indian man visiting me right now who had a shamanic experience with Mongolian shamans who came here to do a ceremony. And he was having a lot of problem with his wife's spirit, who had passed away unexpectedly at night. She had died. And for a year and a half, he hadn't slept because she kept coming to him and talking to him like he was alive, like she was alive. And so he had no sleep, and he said that he would like to participate in this Mongolian shamanic ceremony. And this amazing shaman woman exorcised that out of him, or whatever exactly she did. She took an antler and dug it into his back, going all the way down the back of his spine, and some other different things during the ceremony. And the next day, for the first time in 1.5 years, our friend was able to sleep again. And he's been sleeping ever since then and has never had an issue again. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing to bring two cultures together that believe in shamanism as their doctor and their healer and their advisor. And it's a very important person in the community. And they were able to cross cultures with different, like we had 4 interpreters for all the different languages. And this man was healed. And I thought how beautiful to bring two different, Mongolia and Mexico, completely different plights of the
But
earth.
it is, if you think about it, and I certainly do this on my course on a shamanic circle, is we have the very center, which is truth and healing, wisdom and understanding. Like the spokes of a wheel, all of the spokes go into the center. So it doesn't matter which spoke you're on. The dream consciousness is not so different from the shamanic consciousness. We all have our unique way of traveling. We all have, in waking reality, the different languages. But when we go beyond the waking languages, what the left brain uses, there's only one language, and that's the language of the image, which is why I have the tarot cards as well, and tarot cards that have all images on them, simply because the image is the doorway to the healing, to the understanding, to bringing everything together. And it's interesting, your story of the dream and seeing a person in the dream. My story of a dream kind of matches yours in a little bit different way. You approached someone who didn't speak the language and you were asking, are you in my dream? I had an experience where in the altered dream state, I was in Kamambo Temple in Egypt. And in that temple, I was shown to do healing on people. I didn't see their faces, but I was shown what to do. I arrived back in California. I was here, obviously, on the East Coast doing this visionary work. I arrived in California to do my doctoral studies. And in the great hall where we are, someone screams to me, "It's you, it's you." I'd never met this woman in my life. And she comes to me and she tells me I did a healing on her. She described what I was wearing, which is what I was wearing on the day that I did the healing in Kamambo. She describes what I did. And interestingly enough, she lived on the island here in the East Coast. And she had a child that was going to a child psychologist who happened to know me from my days as a young woman having psychic experiences. She told him this unusual experience of a woman appearing at the bottom of her bed. She was studying with Guru Maya at the time. And she said, this woman gave me Shatsiput. And she mentioned my name because obviously she had met me. Yeah, she recognized me. I did not recognize her because I didn't see anyone. And then it got better because someone I knew in Egypt called to ask me what I was doing at Kamambo Temple on that very day. They described what I was wearing, and they said I disappeared into a place basically on the bottom where it isn't there anymore, but there was a place where they used to keep the mummified crocodiles. And that's exactly where we went. So how do you explain that? People would look and say, all right, you're in a visionary state, like Gail's visionary state, a dream, whether you're in a dream at night, sleeping, or you're in a shamanic journey, altering your consciousness with drumming or rattling, or you're in meditation, or you're me sitting at a computer and all of a sudden these experiences happen, or calling up something with the drumming. You're somewhere else. In ancient Egypt, the dream space was a noun, and it was a noun that was in the hieroglyphs as an open eye with feet. You're going somewhere. And think about it. When you talk about a dream or a visionary experience, you usually start with, I was, I went, I did. You're somewhere. You're somewhere doing something. But how do we account when we're somewhere doing something and I have two people, one in Egypt and one in California, and I'm in New Jersey, and they all saw me doing what I was doing in a visionary space? Consciousness is non-local. And that's why, as Gail talks about all of these Indians coming together with different languages and different tribes, whether you're a dreamer and you're really looking at your dreams or going into the shamanic space, it's dream consciousness. And that's what makes us healed. Your friend got a beautiful healing from that.
Yes.
Yes, it's a magical, mystical, mysterious, hidden space.
I I'm learning as we're talking about relating to it, to thinking about things that have happened before. And it just feels like a more relaxed thing, thinking that, oh, it's just another space of consciousness. It doesn't matter that I was awake. It was all, it's just as real as if I was in a dream. It's
Oh,
the same.
absolutely, because it's our focus. So we can be very aware of the physical around us, but we're walkers between the worlds. And there's one foot in each. And that experience that you have is outside of time and space. We see things as past, we see things as future, we see things as present. But in truth, when we step beyond the dream gate, we're beyond all of those boundaries. We're no longer limited by time and space. Neither are we limited by our body, which is only capable of doing so much, simply because it's a vehicle like a car. It's going to age and it's going to die, but what's inside it isn't. Like, I love to ask people, well, who are you really? You know, your mother called you Gail. My mother called me Janet. That's not my name. I was 4 years old when I sat at, my mom was an artist and a designer. And as the baby, I was sitting at the bottom of her easel. I must have been about 4 years old. She showed me a picture of me as a fat little baby. I was 10 pounds when I was born. And
Wow.
she was telling me how she put it in the newspaper and she wanted it to win a prize, and I didn't win any prize. And I looked at this picture, this 4-year-old toddler, and I remember looking at it and saying, that's not me, because obviously I didn't look like that anymore. And then looking and saying, well, I'm not surprised it didn't win a prize, because I wasn't really impressed. But it brought me somewhere else to say, but you're asking me, who am I now? And I'm a little girl now. But my brothers are in school, and they were little boys once. And so was my mother. My aunt, who was 19 years older than my mother, was like more like a grandmother. I suddenly had this entire image of somebody asking me who I was at different times in my life. I would be somebody different. I'd be somebody's wife, maybe, and somebody's mother, somebody's widow. I'd be somebody's teacher, somebody's doctor. But who am I really? And I, that day, decided my name wasn't Janet. My mother gave me the name Janet because I went beyond when I was that baby. Who was I before I went into that baby's body? And believe it or not, all of the artwork, all of the writing, and I always loved to write the stories, I didn't want to sign my name on anything because I didn't know my name. So, you know, this space where you go with the shamanic work, where I go, whether it's shamanic work, visionary work, dream work, or even the tarot, each card opens a door and brings me down a corridor, like the ancient Egyptians, Reshwet, the dream. They enter the dream, and that dream is a healing space, because the laws that govern waking, transient, physical reality, they don't exist on the other side. So we can have healings that seem miraculous because they're beyond the limitations that we place on them. I used to teach anatomy and physiology, Gail, and kids would come in, college students, pre-med, physiology majors, open the book. All right, this is cardiovascular, this is the nervous system, you know, this is the reproductive system, this is the integumentary system. Close the book. I said, you know what? There are no systems. We put that idea on the body. The body does not read the manual that we've written for it. So if anything, let me teach you how to think. And in fact, at the end of one of those classes up at NYU, a student gave me the book, Carl Jung, Man and His Symbols. And he had said to me, you know, you belong in the philosophy department. You've taught physiology, because the fact is we don't know anything. And I was telling them, this book today, you think is dogma. Tomorrow, it's going to be folly. So don't memorize the fact. Don't get stuck in the walls of waking reality. It is that space of dream that's going to tell us who we are and where we're going. You know, I was going to be a music and arts major up until my freshman year in high school. And then I went to a convent school, and the nun talked in the general science class about DNA and RNA, and how someday someone might find the key to memory. In a flash, I got up as though somebody hit me on the head, and I passed that nun on the way out, and I said to her, I know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to major in biology, and I'm going to find the root of memory. Well, that's my first doctorate. And then I realized the memory I was looking for wasn't the neurons in the brain. It's the remembrance of who we are. The story of Osiris and Isis. The ancient Egyptian god is dismembered, but the Sora Mystica, his sister wife, puts him back together. That's us. We've been dismembered. We have our eyes and ears and nose and tongue and fingers that see, hear, taste, and touch everything. We're dismembered. We're scattered all over the place. But if we go inside, the sister of our soul, the Sora Mystica, is the one that's going to help us. And that's bringing it all together. I mean, here I got the 2 doctorates because I'm still looking for memory to remember who we really are.
There's 2 things I want to say. One is I didn't learn that about time being irrelevant until I became a remote viewer and did remote viewing. And I was asked to draw pictures that hadn't been selected yet in the future. And I did not know how I could do that because I was not trained as a remote viewer. But as I was doing these, I realized that time was not at all what we thought. Because how could I be drawing a picture that hasn't been picked yet, but it's somehow in the time? I'm drawing at 1 o'clock. The computer hasn't even selected the picture until 3 o'clock. It hasn't, in our time, it hasn't actually happened. But in the other space, it has happened because there is no time.
Well,
so of
you talk about time. I have a newspaper article here.
Yes.
And long story short, my husband lost his brother when he was a little boy. So obviously, I never met my husband's brother. Fast forward 25 years into marriage. I'm in my office working. So again, Gail, this goes to show you, I'm not looking for my brother-in-law. I'm not thinking of my brother-in-law. No one is sitting in front of me asking me to please beam down their brother. And my husband's brother appears in the office. And it's interesting because when I see people from the other side, in a way, I don't know why they come to me. I'm not polite. I immediately say, don't tell me you love so-and-so. I know that already. That's self-evident. Give me evidence that I know that you're here. And his brother showed me a picture. And the picture was of my husband as a little boy in a white outfit that looked like he was ready to play baseball. Again, my big mouth. Turn around and I say to him, no, my husband doesn't like sports. I can't imagine this. So he disappears. I share the information with my husband, who says to me, you know me, I don't like sports. I said, all right, maybe your older brother dressed you up for Halloween and chose that costume, or, I'm trying to figure out. No. 3 months later, my husband's best friend comes into the office with a sheet from our local newspaper. It's about a baseball game that was played in Ebbetsfield, Brooklyn. And the team was a Staten Island team where we grew up. And the little boy, front and center in his little white outfit, is my husband. My husband comes in immediately and says to me, this is what you described. Now, I did not see all the boys. I only saw my husband. And I said to him, yes, that's exactly what I saw. So I look at the date that this happened. I said, do you now remember it? Because obviously he told me he didn't remember. He still didn't remember it. So I look at the date. This game happened 2 months after his brother died. So his brother was already gone, showing me a picture of something that happened after he died. And it's showing me the picture that's not going to be in the newspaper for another 3 months. Well, my husband goes back to talk to his friend, and his brother is in the office again. And he said to me, go back out now and ask him to show you my best friends in that picture. Once again, my big mouth. I said, look, I just looked at the picture. They were all little children. He disappeared. I walked out. My husband puts his glasses on. There on the top row in the corner is his brother's best friend. So when you talk about time in parapsychology, we would say this is super psi. I'm looking at an event that happened in the past. It's not going to be apparent until the future. My husband doesn't know about it. My consciousness can go out. And I can believe that. We sit in a sea of consciousness. We think we're isolated. We're not. We're in that sea. So anyone who does any psychic work, you're putting your pseudopods like an amoeba into this great sea that's beyond time and space. Everything has already happened in that space outside of time. It's all present. So you can get something from the past, you can get something from the future, or if you like, you can interpret this and say, I met my husband's brother. I mean, he certainly physically looked like what he was supposed to in the office. Do we have any proof of anything? No, absolutely not. We can't really use the word evidential because I could have just been putting my pseudopods out there. Why in heavens, 25 years later after our marriage and good 35 years after this gentleman had passed away, why he chose that moment to appear, I have no idea. I can't explain that. But it is a mystery, and it is that space. And yes, I like to think I connected. He connected with me. And he probably connected with me so that when my own husband would pass, I would have this as one of the benchmarks of someone who's passed away. And many people have, but this one really stands out because I have a newspaper to prove, that there was something. So it is time is meaningless, truly.
And I think the reason when you spoke to your husband about it and he said he couldn't remember anything like that is probably because he was 2 months.
Oh, he was in shock. He was in shock. So he was a little boy. He was 12 years old. His brother was 19. And he was just so shocked out of it that even as an elder, even there in his 50s, he didn't remember that event. He didn't remember it. So you're quite right, Gail. Yeah, I believe he was in shock.
Yes. And so that's why the only reason I think it didn't come to him. And maybe this was part of his growth and awakening when you showed him this picture so that your husband would then also reconnect or
we had so much. There were so many events. My husband used to tell me that I should get air miles for all the traveling that I did psychically. So, and while he was not so much of the traveler, he had experiences as well. So, he was, I don't think he needed this. I think it really came more for me, to be honest with you. There are benchmark things that happen and certainly have happened in my life, both with my daughter and my son before they passed and friends that have passed. There are things that have happened.
You've lost your husband and your daughter and your son?
I lost my son of leukemia, my daughter of leukemia. I lost my son of aortic stenosis and my husband of a massive brain bleed.
Oh, so is there any other children left or?
Oh, this was it. This was my family.
Mm-hmm.
I am the last, but then as a young woman, there were 3 separate Buddhist masters who didn't speak English either, but in a major groups, they didn't know me, stopped and said, Bodhisattva. So I did believe that was true, which means I made a vow that I would send my family home before I went. So why I'm still here, I have no idea, Gail.
Well, I have a whole bunch of questions here. Some of them have been answered, so I don't have to ask about them, but there's 2 things you have that I want to talk about besides these couple of questions I have, which is you've released a new book called The Dream Gate.
Yes.
So
yes.
Can you tell us a little about the book? But I have a couple more questions I have to get in our time.
Sure. All right. Well, the dream gate to me was important because as I do work and I do private work on dream analysis with people, the big mistake most people make, first of all, is not paying attention to dreams. But then the second one is to interpret the dream on its surface, as though what comes in the dream is actually what the dream wants you to know. And I don't ascribe to that. I think sometimes that's true. Sometimes what you see is actually what the dream wants you to know. I mean, famously, Freud said sometimes that cigar is just a cigar, but most of the time that's not it. And often people like to think that the best dreams are the dreams that maybe predict something that's going to happen. And that's not so great in my mind either, because it's not helping me know more about me. It may tell me that there was the Twin Towers, or there was an earthquake, or there was a tsunami. I can't do a darn thing about it. So what's the importance for me? Maybe it might say to me, consciousness is non-local. Look, you saw something that was about to happen. Fine. But what do I really think the dreams are about? Well, I think the dreams are meant to fill in the cracks of our waking consciousness. They're there to compensate for what we're missing. They're there to give guidance and to give help so that we might understand things better. And how are we able to do that? Well, we stand on one side of a river. And in order to cross the river from what we're seeing to what we're really going to know, we have to cross the stones. And each time we cross and get on a stone, we understand a little more. So how does that work? Well, you may see somebody and you haven't seen this person in years. And you might want to pick up the phone or look on the internet and find out where they are. They may be somebody from your childhood. I had an experience like this in one of my classes. Giving this example, a young boy came to mind, and that young boy was in my first grade class, for heaven's sake, decades ago. So am I supposed to go online? It's a boy, good, so his last name is going to be the same. I don't have to worry about him changing it for marriage. Well, am I supposed to look him up? Is there anything in the dream I'm supposed to tell him? Most often not. That's not what this is about. So what did this boy represent? So as I expand it, I say to everyone, well, what do I remember the most about him? Oh, his father owned a florist shop, and little Janet would save her pennies and give him the money for lilies of the valley to buy for my mother for Mother's Day. And guess what? That was the week of Mother's Day when this just pops into my head. And I'm very extemporaneous in the classes. I don't prepare it ahead of time. If I'm telling you it's going to be extemporaneous, I'm going to tell you what just comes into my head so that we can work on it together. When you get those dream images, and the image is the language of the dream, you have to open it up and walk through. Boy, child, class. What was I doing? What did he represent? Move through, and then bring it back to mirror waking. Bringing that back to mirror waking, I laughed. I said to everyone, isn't it true? Sunday's going to be Mother's Day. So this boy comes to my mind, reminding me of these lilies of the valley, reminding me of my mother, and almost making me feel like it is one of those liminal messages from the other side to say to me, this little event of a child decades ago coming to mind is bringing the mother forward, is giving you a message. So Dreamgate, the book, how did that happen? The publishers wanted me to write a dream dictionary. I'm famous. My doctoral thesis was on the iconography of transcendence. I said to them, no, if you write a dream dictionary, it's good for you and your interpretation. It's not good for everybody. It's very unique, and it opens up as you get older. My dream dictionary that I created back in the 90s when I got that degree, it's so expanded now. It's not going to be the same. In fact, I famously said my first doctorate followed the scientific method. My second doctorate absolutely crashed it and said, this can't be repeated. Everybody that does this, it's going to be different and unique. So I wanted to create something that an individual could make their own dream dictionary, that I could walk them through the steps that would help them to open the doors of each image so that they would understand that today the image will say something, tomorrow it expands, until in fact it expands to a point that when you go in these dreams, you're going to be able to interpret them better. It's like an onion. It's got many layers, and the outside skin is not where I want you to stop. So the dream gate begins with that, and then the last part of the dream gate really is something that's a preview of what is coming up, which I'd like to put out there. And it's a book basically kind of on looking at dreams, going into dream incubation, what the ancients did when they went into those Asclepian, brought a dream, brought a petition, brought a question, brought something for healing, and then entered into a sacred space. So the second part of the book, I bring you into some of those ancient spaces. Either you can read it first, you can record it, you can listen to it, and then alter the consciousness to move in it. So it's very much about teaching individuals to understand their dreams. That's what the dream gate is meant for.
I want I have to say, while you're talking, and I'm not writing down any notes or anything, all these dreams I haven't thought or remembered about keep popping up now as you're speaking. And I don't want to interrupt and say, oh, I'll tell you about this dream, tell you about that dream. But what you're talking about in ancient or in culture about dreaming, I feel privileged to have seen that when I attended in 1988 or 87. It was my first peyote ceremony up in the mountains of Mexico, and in a very remote area where I just discovered I was actually the third white person to be there at that time. It had not opened up to the, other people, where now all kinds of people have been there, but back then it wasn't. And I looked inside, and all the peyoteros, who are the men that are responsible for this very important ceremony that they do for the world. It's not just for their community, it's for the planet. All these people, all these Huichol peyoteros, and there's 36 of them, everybody's sitting in a little tiny chair they've made in this temple, and they're all dreaming together.
Mhm.
As they dream together, they make all the political decisions, because that's where they pick who's going to be the next. Every 5 years their government changes.
Mhm.
It's not a Mexican government, it's the Huichol government. And they need a new head of the police department, they need a new person in charge of ceremonies, whatever all the different positions are. And it's all filled in dream time. It's
Mhm.
not like they go out and say, oh yes, this person, could you do this job? No, it's decided in the dream time, and whoever's picked in that's their position to carry out in the community. So dreaming together as a group, I thought, was just a phenomenal thing to watch. But then I actually experienced it with my dear friend Julio, where him and I were dreaming together. And I've never had this with anyone else. It only happened with him. And when we contacted each other and told each other the same dream, and how we'd seen that we were together, dreaming together.
Oh no, this will happen the same way, the groups that I have, the more that we stay together, the everything kind of links because we are all part of that same matrix. So absolutely. And there's a lot, I'm sure you know, about the canoe, where shamanically all of the members get into the imaginal canoe and they dream together. I mean, I had one experience where each one of us had a canoe for three in our group, and we were each asked to visit a particular place with those other people that were with us. And we were able to see their power animals. We were able to share the vision. We came back with the same messages, because consciousness is non-local. And that's the one message that if we got and understood, the world would be a better place, besides the fact that really ignorance is at the basis of all of our problems. It's not a question. The lack of understanding causes people to do the wrong things. And if we could only crack that nut of ignorance, there'd be a lot more fellowship and healing and help in the world. We wouldn't have to be buying all the machine guns. Instead, we could be growing the food to feed everyone. So yes, beautiful for you to have these shared experiences.
It's my Woodstock line of "We are one."
Yeah.
It's been, it was painted across the fence while I was sitting there in the audience, and it has stayed with me ever since. And it's a true truth.
Yeah.
And if people realize we are one, they would not hurt and do the things that they would do, because they would understand that they're doing it to themselves as well, without really knowing that. Because
No, that's why, as I said, I always look and say all problems are boiled down to one cause: ignorance. It's always ignorance.
So I have a couple. I wanted to talk about your book, but I also wanted to talk about your mystical dream tarot.
Yes. Okay. When I created that was interesting, because I was not a tarot reader at all. From childhood, I read playing cards. In fact, one of the publishers had asked me, write something on the playing cards, because nobody really does that anymore. But while I was doing my doctoral degree under Eugene Taylor from Harvard, all of these images started to come up as tarot cards. And I can remember talking to Eugene Taylor and saying to him, I don't understand why this is happening. I don't do tarot cards. He said to me, go with it. Give the time, just go with it. Don't take any courses for one of those semesters. Let it, because it was occupying all my time. I was drawing the images. They were coming, they were showing me what they were. And what we initially wanted to do was to put it out as a tool of apperception. Within psychology in the 1930s in Harvard University, Christiana Morgan and Henry Murray came up with a set of cards that had images on them. Some of them were pictures and some were like more photographs, where one would, the psychologist would show the image to a patient and ask the patient what's going on. There's an image of a little boy, the famous one. He's got a violin in front of him. His hand is over to the side. He's kind of napping. And you'd ask the patient, well, what is this? So someone might look at it and say, well, the little boy is bored. He's waiting to go for his lesson. He'd rather be outside playing. You know, I looked at it and would say, oh, he's dreaming about being in Carnegie Hall playing and everybody loves his music. We all say something different and it tells us where we are. My pictures did that type of thing. It opened up doorways to see beyond the image that was there. But time passed, my son died. I didn't do anything with it. And come forward after my husband passed, one of my author friends said to me, well, you know, it's time for you to take the bushel off your head. You took care of the sick daughter, the son, and the husband is gone. Get this out there. And he showed it to a publisher in the UK, a lovely, lovely man. And I will never forget him for giving me my chance, Nick Edison, who loved it and brought it forward in the Mystical Dream Tarot. It is very different from any other tarot deck, simply because it's not just the major arcana that have all the exotic images. It's not the regular right away that everybody memorizes 78 cards and yes, uses their intuition to sew them together in a reading. No, it doesn't follow that. It's got 78 cards and every one of them is like a major arcana with the images. And you can do a reading with just one card because there's so many images on the card, whether it's the person and the chalice and the sky, or there's everything on there for you to open up what appeals to you. What are you looking at right now? What do you think is going on? And I do this with my classes right now, especially with the shamanic circle and tarot, one card at a time. One card is all they need. And it opens up so much that it's pretty incredible because it is a tool of our perception. It teaches you about yourself. I use it even to interpret dreams so that at night you go to bed, you pick up, and I've got the cards somewhere here. You pick up two cards before you go to bed. You look at one, and we'll just randomly just take the two cards that want to come here. All right, so you've got a card of a man, and the man happens to be on a cross, and he's standing on a coffin that's being split apart by swordfish. Now, you look at that card before you go to bed, and then in the morning, you have a dream or not, and you look at this card, and it's showing you a goddess on top of a temple, and the balance of a male and a female on the waters with a fish, a goldfish. Now, what does this say? Well, the first one is about illusion. The man is off the cross is behind him, so he's not tethered to it anymore. He's not tethered to the coffin either, because the fish from the depths, like your consciousness from the depths, is rising to free him of his illusions. And what do we get in the end? Well, we get the card that says, we really go between all pairs of opposites. We rise like a deity, but it's the goldfish of the depths consciousness. So now you have a dream or not. You look at these two cards and you ask, where else does it bring? Where else does it bring you? What does it remind you of? Have you been to a place like this? Is it in your imagination? Is it real? Was it in your past? And all of a sudden, even without a dream, people come up with the information on these cards as though if they had a dream, they bring it to me. And boy, it matches their life like you wouldn't believe. So the Mystical Dream Tarot, which we were very lucky, it happened to be a #1 bestseller for a while. But yes, it can be used, by the way, people will ask, as a regular tarot. You can use it like that as well. There's enough information that if you've learned the Rider-Waite and you just want to use it for that, that's fine. But the more depth work is the work of looking at each and every image and letting those images just speak to you and bring you to a place. Here's the child with the Hierophant, and in the sky, of course, is the mirror of truth. So each one of the cards will bring them somewhere. Here's breaking open the egg, and what comes from the egg, the serpent of wisdom. And of course, the female is naked because she's naked to truth. It's not, there's no covering, and the light above her head is showing. There's enlightenment coming. So each one of the cards is going to tell you a story. We have the wise man that's standing by his alchemical desk in the cave. So it's a very different tarot, Gail. It's not like anything. People will love it or hate it. If they're Rider-Waite and they don't want to see anything different, they certainly voice their opinions when they write about it. But those that really want to go into the depths, it's a tool of our perception after the Harvard University set by Christiana Morgan and Henry Murray. So, but it's we've had a lot of success with it.
So did you do those illustrations?
Yes.
Were those illustrations?
Yeah. I did the illustrations, and the publisher had a commercial artist, tame them down so that we only use so many colors because it's too expensive to use the different colors. But yeah, all of the images. In fact, I have the original set. I did the tarot of vision and dream, and that's these cards that have not been changed with color. So some of the cards have more color than others simply because that was how the dream came out. But yeah, all of those images were mine.
So could you tell our listeners two things? One is where, and actually myself, I'm interested also, where we could purchase these cards, and then also tell them how you have classes if they'd like to learn about it.
Right. Everything is on Amazon.com. All you need is my name, Janet Piedilato, Piedilato. Pretty easy. I have a website, janetpiedilato.net. And I'm on Facebook, certainly. And Eventbrite has a lot of my classes because I give classes every Tuesday and Friday. The Tuesday is called Ancestral Healing via the Waking Lucid Dream. And the Fridays are about the Dream Gate. They're about the shamanic circle. They're about the tarot. And really, it's fusion. It's trying to help you to understand what an image means. Because when you open up that image, you understand the dream. So, but everything is there. As I said, it's on Eventbrite. It's on janetpiedilato.net. And the books are available on Amazon. Pieta's Tales, which you mentioned initially when we began, is basically my childhood story presented as a childhood fiction. It's kind of compared to The Little Prince, but it's my story. And there's a lot of shamanism in Pieta's Tales, Gail, and I think you'd recognize it. It literally was my last gift to my husband on his last Christmas alive. I put it together with the images for him, and they're all my drawings that are on it. And then the publisher picked it up, and it got published, which was not my initial intention.
I'm very interested in this and in that and in the class. And I'm wondering, do you keep those classes small, even though I know it's on the internet, or do you have large?
It depends. It depends. It's so different each time the class. There's a core group that's always there. There's people that pop in and pop out over time. So it really is all up to grabs. If it's the holiday and people are away, we may only have a couple of people show up. But unless I'm traveling or something else turns up, usually you can count on me every Tuesday and every Friday night. From East Coast time, it's from 6 to 7:30.
So that would be 3 Pacific to 4:30.
We have people from all over the world. So I've got people from.
I'm jumping in on one. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just have to get my time free. There's two things I just wanted to share because I always look for things that are common between my guest and myself, to share stories about. And the one was that you said that you spent time with Luis and with the Rhines.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I looked at your picture and you said, God, she's so pretty. I said, she looks too young. How could she have known them?
Oh no, I was
Yes.
a freshman in college. As I said, I was part of this seminar, and I was the only one who did things. Most of the other students chose things in English or French or history that they could have studied in a class. And I got very proactive. In fact, they made a position for me in the administrative building. I was the first student of development and public relations for the college, because I brought so many people in on mental health. I brought people in. In fact, Ravi Shankar came and played music.
Uh,
We had a meeting on all of the work that I had done with the Rhines, because I did some research on Psi. I traveled down there more than once. Stanley came and spoke. So I was very active in all of this, even with Carlos Olsis. I was very lucky. I mean, here I was starting out just a young person in college, and suddenly Stanley opened up the whole world. He became my external mentor. This is Stan Krippner, for those of you who don't know, really the absolute expert on dreams, and certainly my dream companion my entire life. But Stanley then was the motivating force. My first airplane trip was paid by my college, on the basis of Stan Krippner saying she's got to go down and meet the Rhines. This is very important. She has to come to Manhattan and meet Ethel Johnson Myers, a great medium that the New York Times reporter came so that we could report it in the newspaper. We had a seance. So here there were the movie Seance on a Wet Afternoon was playing in the theaters. And where was I? I was sitting in a music conservatory with a medium who was moving a pendulum on her neck, and then had the most amazing mediumship. It was just, this was a time that was just ripe. And had I wanted to go in that field, I met all of the important people through Stanley Krippner.
well,
I ended up, as I said, I ended up going to NYU, studying under Dr. Fleur Strand, who was absolutely my amazing mentor. It was really neurophysiology. And I did single cell electrocardiology in a hospital, so I had a very scientific grounding to move me into transpersonal psychology. So I kind of walked between the two worlds.
well, I just want you to know their daughter, Sally, was my first guest on my first podcast.
Oh, I love it. Sally Feather. Yes.
Her and I met some years ago, and she had come out to the Institute of Noetic Sciences for a parapsychology conference. And we met when I was registering her, and we became friends there. And we've been connected ever since.
Oh, no,
And
she was wonderful. In fact, someone recently said to me, I should really look into getting reconnected, because it's been a long time.
well, she is so inspirational. When you see that, I think she was 90 when I interviewed her, and her body just moved so smooth and fluidly around the room as she was getting some of her things. And then her talk is so, such an amazing talk. And she's just a brilliant, kind woman. And so she invited me out, and I spoke at the Rhine Research at Duke University. So I got to get to see that experience. And then they just did another talk with me recently that's going to be posted on their website. But I found out that she kept a file on me, so that I'm actually in a file at the Rhine Research
I love
of
it.
all my stories. And she said when she had written her book, The Gift, had she met me before, my stories would have been in that book, and I'm thinking she's read 10,000 or more of her letters that had come into her mother and father of psychic experiences, and she found mine interesting, like blown away. Okay. So she's just been a wonderful support, and just, and it's just a wonderful organization, and I try to support them also. And, places like that are stemming from that time. The only thing I ever heard about her father from other parapsychologists was, if you got fired by J.B. Rhine, then you're in. like that meant
It was an
made
exciting,
it.
it was
If
an
you got
exciting, it was an exciting time in my life for sure.
I'm
I took a
so
different
thrilled,
direction.
just thrilled to know that you were there and, and got to see that. The other thing was we went into their little museum that they had of all the, the Xeno cards and the dice and all these things. And I didn't realize I picked up the dice and I threw the dice and they were so old that one of them started to crumble when I didn't mean
Oh
dice, I felt so bad.
no,
So
no, you could not have
I've
known.
left my mark. And the other person I wanted to talk to you about that we had in common is Michael and Sandra Harner.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful people. I loved both of them. I did the special courses, of course, with Michael. So I studied for years with him. And with Sandra, I did the counseling course in California, but just absolutely delightful. Michael was just one of the finest individuals I've ever met, truly.
A
I
beautiful.
have nothing but good things to say about him and great respect for him.
I feel exactly the same. And I ended up, it's very strange because I took the first shamanic course, where you're journeying and meeting your power animals. And I had done this with him in San Francisco. I think it was at San Francisco at the UCSF or somewhere on the campus. He was teaching this. And I went and took the 2-day class and I loved it. And I loved finding my power animals. I didn't know I was going to get into shamanism after doing this. I just was going because I just wanted to have the experience. But it ended up that in his later years in life, I ended up getting to know him. And I'd only had him as a teacher then, because I had all these friends I made from Mongolia that were Mongolian shamans, and they had been writing and in communication with him for many years. So when they came to stay with me, they asked me to bring them to see Michael Harner. So here I am thinking, God, I took a class with this guy, but I can't go to his house or anything. I don't know him. But when the Mongolians came, all of a sudden I had this access into all Michael and Sandra's world of shamanism.
Right. Well,
So
he was wonderful with me because it actually happened through Stan Krippner.
Mhm.
I had shamanic experiences since childhood. I had a closet, a toy closet, and I would remove the few board games that I had, and I would sit there, tell my mother I was going somewhere. And so I had no idea what I was doing, but this was part of, it really was very shamanic. I got through my freshman year world history on the basis of everything I saw in that closet. And when the teacher got married and went on vacation, he left me the book to teach the class for the 2 weeks he was gone. He probably would never have believed if I told him where I got my information. So fast forward to Stan Krippner. I wanted to do a phenomenological study of shamanism. So here's the deal. I had always studied with physical teachers in a waking ordinary reality world. And inside me, since childhood, I was probably no more than 5 or 6, I have that same shamanic guide who brought me in that closet. They're still here. And so it was a little weird for this young woman now with the degrees to try to figure out, was I really doing something that other people did? So I spoke to Stanley. I was doing my doctoral degree at the time. And I said, Stan, your second doctorate, I'd like to go to Hana. And he said to me, but you're doing it already. Why do you need to go? I said, I want to do a phenomenological study. I want to see if what he's teaching in any way mirrors what I'm doing. Well, I was only there for that first week. And I mean, it was a 3-year course that I think we met every season for a week. That Michael pulled me aside and he noticed right away. He said to me, look, you're already doing this. So I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. Do whatever you want to do. Listen to me, but just go off because you're at that point. He was just so absolutely wonderful with me, considering that I was quite different from what the other students were, and I'll never forget, everybody gave us a year to make a costume and everything to bring our teacher forward. My teacher didn't want to come forward. And I said to Michael, I'm not going to participate in this. She doesn't want to come. And one of the days during the function, my teacher said to me, get outside now because we're next. And I remember thinking, oh my God, everybody's prepared these beautiful scenarios. And you got to be kidding. Why are you getting me up? What is this about? And in truth, I was left at the door, and I have no idea what happened when I appeared inside at that conference. I'm only told that my body looked a lot different than what I look. It looked taller, it looked more secure, and it had quite a bit to tell Michael. And no one shared what it was. I wish they would have had a video, because all I remember was standing at the door. It's one of the few times that I've had something that left me as an amnesiac. I went in, I did something, I came out, never knew I went in. I was sitting on the floor of the foyer the whole time. And Michael just supported the work. He was authentic. He was true. He knew what he was doing, and he is credited for bringing shamanic work and the shamanic journey, which is an entrance into the dream world here. He didn't, what I'm trying to really stress is the fact he didn't push everybody to be a cookie cutter. He wanted us to really develop. And I think you can see today when there are some people that I'll notice have studied with the Harner method, and they've not moved on from it. Michael would not be happy with that. Michael wanted each person to get in. And like you started out an hour ago saying, well, gee, we had the Huichols and we had these other Indians and the Mongolians, and they all got along and we all had this common dream. That's really what Michael was about, bringing us all from all the different threads. I mean, he was just a very fine individual who was very talented, very connected, and very true to the shamanic way. So we were very fortunate to have him.
Tell our listeners his book, The Way of the Shaman.
I
I have
book.
a little pocketbook from when I had it when I was young.
Yeah.
As I'm just saying, I've had that book for a very long time. But
No, he was a treasure and a gift to all of us.
Yes, and that if there's people interested in shamanism, I recommend that as your first book to read, The Way of the Shaman by Michael Harner. But I also want to say that I came in then during a time when he was becoming frail. And so I went to his home twice, and I brought a Mongolian shaman there who did healing on him. And he felt tremendous relief during that time from, whatever pains or things he was dealing with. This Mongolian shaman gave him 2 treatments. When she came in the beginning, we brought him to his house and she treated him. And then he contacted me later and said, could she come back one more time before she leaves? And she did. And it was I seem to be a person who connects people to other people throughout life. It was the most wonderful thing to bring him there. And then they came back and did a ceremony in a building I have in the back of my property where we would do shamanic rituals. But now my daughter lives there, so we don't have the space anymore. But when we had it then, they came to present a medal and 2 awards to 3 of us, to Michael Harner, myself, and I think Jürgen Kremer was the other person, the 3 of us. And there I am. I can't tell you the honor of receiving a medal from Mongolia with these 2 amazing men at the same time. And it was, toward the end of his life. So they were giving him this honor of the work and connection that he had with the Mongolian people. So I'm just saying, from this one time that I took a class, I didn't know that 20 years later he was going to be at my house, or that I was going to bring him Mongolian healers to help him when he was frail. And I just thought he was the nicest, most wonderful, kind man. And I'm just, I think their organization, it's an amazing organization. And his wife is retired now, but it's being carried on by people that he was working with before he had passed. And I just think it's good for our listeners to know about these other people and places and other opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. He was a treasure, and she as well.
Yes. So that was one of my other ones I have down here on how important I wanted to make sure we got Michael and Sally Reinfeather mentioned, in our talk today. And I'd like to see if there was a way of you sharing, like, is there any kind of sample or explanation you can give for these people who say they cannot remember a dream? Is there any little tool or anything besides,
Sure,
reading?
sure. Well, for one thing, as I said, if you have a deck of cards, or you have even pictures in a magazine, and
Mhm.
you look at two before you go to bed, just look at those pictures, and then put a notebook by the side of the bed and write in the notebook, I'm going to have a dream tonight, and I'm going to remember, and I'll tell you, you probably will have 4 or 5 dreams. You're only asking to remember one. I'm going to remember a dream. And in the morning, have an alarm clock that goes off with a chime or something very gentle about a half hour to an hour before you actually need to hop out of bed and take a shower and run to work. So you've got this extra half hour cushion. You wake up, don't get up. Think to yourself, where was I? What was I doing? What was I dreaming? And let those thoughts come. Tell me you have nothing. Okay, get up. That notebook that you wrote, what I want you to do is make up a dream. And it's the where, when, what, how, what was the resolution? So I went somewhere. I went to my house. I saw my mother. We sat and ate. In the end, I had to get up and go to school, or I went to work, or whatever. Fine. You made up a dream. Do that every night. You want a dream, and we're not incubating a specific question right now. We just want a dream. And then look at the pictures that you used to kind of stimulate you. How do those pictures come in with your image? I had a gentleman who was an engineer. He was an architect. He was very scientific. He came to me for some physical issues because I do complementary medicine. But we started to work on his dreams. He never dreamt at all. He was a man that was in his early 60s, never remembered his dreams. I said to him, Al, you got to get a book, and I want you every day. This is what you're going to do at night. Look at 2 pictures, look at tarot cards or whatever. Say to yourself, I'm going to have a dream in the morning. Write down a fake dream. That's fine, because that dream will still tell us something. He did this for several weeks until one morning, because he came once a week for a session. One session he came and he said, well, I didn't make you up a dream. And I laughed. I thought, well, he's going to tell me he was busy or whatever. No, he actually had a dream. It's kind of like that movie. If you build it, they will come. Well, if you give it the attention, you'll start remembering. So make the intention. And then eventually, we didn't talk about dream incubation, but you can ask for a specific dream to come. Perhaps you just lost a beloved one, a mother, a father, a sister, brother, husband, wife, or whoever. Ask in the dream, I would like to have a meeting with this person. Please let them come in the dream. And then again, in the morning, write what you would have liked to have happened, even if it didn't, and just keep at it, because it's the patience and it's the devotion. If you put the time in, something will happen. So everyone can eventually remember the dream. And if night fails you, remember, you've got the lucid waking dream. During the day, close the doors of a particular room, sit down, light an imaginal candle. In Egypt, there's something called a voice offering. And it means that you make an offering of things that are not present. We who are upon the earth make the offering of bread and beer and alabaster and linen and all things good and pure. Fine, that works. Everything that I said is eternal. Nothing is going to fall away because it's not limited by waking reality. So in your ritual in this room to have a waking lucid dream, pretend you have a candle. Pretend you see the candle light. Maybe you have incense. Pretend you see the incense. And then make the intention. I realize I'm sitting in a waking reality room. I honor the floor beneath me, the ceiling above me, and the 4 walls around me. Show me something to help me with this day. And then just concentrate on your breathing, listen to music if you want, listen to drumming, and let the thoughts come. It takes a couple of billion nerve cells to make an image. Do you think the body's going to waste those images? And don't give up on anything. Whatever image comes, write them down, and you will begin to get yourself into that dream consciousness. You don't need to be asleep to get a dream.
And I do want to say that I have tried asking for a dream specifically for a question, and it does work.
Yeah, it works.
Yes, and it was, into the future, and it was correct. And when the future happened, it was what it said. And I just want to support all our listeners in knowing that I too believe that dreams are very powerful.
Yeah,
And
because it's half of consciousness, Gail. We're only half conscious when we use our eyes, ears, nose, throat, and fingers. That's waking consciousness. We're dismembered from what's inside, the dream consciousness. So both need to unite. We can't have one without the other. I mean, we have people that depend too much on the dream consciousness. Remember, I sit here with these two doors to always remind me, one door is truth and one door is not. One door is deceit. We've got the Walter Mitty's of the world who spend their time in the imaginal, enjoying and hanging out. Yeah, it de-stresses them, but they're not getting any wisdom from these. So we need to be aware, both rational consciousness and dream conscious, they need to look at each other so that we have balance, truly. But we're not conscious unless we have the dream.
I am enjoying our talk so much, and I'd like to just quickly look through and see if there was some questions here that I didn't have answered. Let's see. We talked about dream incubate. We talked about lucid. We talked about the tarot, people not remembering dreams. We talked about dream gate. So I think I'm on my last question, which is my final words here.
Okay.
Why work with dreams, and any other words of wisdom you could share with our listeners now?
Well, I think we've kind of even answered that. We work with dreams to be fully healed. Like the god Osiris, we're dismembered, and we need to have dream consciousness rise to fill in the cracks of waking consciousness. If we want to be fully healed, we need to study the dreams. I was the young woman who wanted to find memory, and I'm still looking for memory because we're dismembered and we need to be remembered. So if you want to live a fully conscious life, that's why you pay attention to dream consciousness.
Beautiful. Well, I really, really enjoyed having you here today. I don't know if there's anything else that we want to cover.
Right.
Or...
This has been fun just to share and to talk and hopefully open our listeners to understand, never to say it's just a dream. Exactly. It's never just a dream.
And also to put in the time to start getting connected with your dreams. I think also very important. And it doesn't matter if you're 60 years old and you haven't remembered a dream ever. You can do this, and you're showing it now.
Absolutely.
So this is all very, very wonderful. So if we're good with that, I'm going to tell our listeners our little finale here, which is thanking Janet so much for being here today, talking about dreams, sharing her dreams and experiences with us. And we want to thank you all for subscribing, sharing, commenting, and looking forward to seeing you here in the I don't know, you know how sometimes they say, oh, maybe the world we're in is the dream, and that we're, whatever thing out there is the dream. So wherever you are, have a wonderful dream, a great week, and thanks for listening to A Small Medium at Large podcast. And we look forward to our next guest and our other shows. Have a great, great time. So thank you. And thank you, Janet, so much for sharing.
Thank you for being here. It's been my pleasure.